people showed up and they were taking things out of their closet that they didn't wear anymore. We all know we have those things.
Yeah.
And there so many of those things are in great condition, but that shoe just doesn't fit you right. So you never reach for it. You reach for the other pair.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much value in all of these things that are hiding in our closets. And these people happily bring them to this thing. And then they refill their bag with clothes that are from their neighbors and their friends.
Yeah.
And I've never seen people happier. Like,
Right.
people are bananas happy. And what happens too is that 500 people are in a room and people are bumping into each other, and
Right.
there's music playing and kids are dancing around, and everybody, it's just like, yeah, it's the good news that we're looking for.
What's not to like?
Yeah.
You're listening to Granite Goodness, the show where we interview New Hampshire people making the world a better place. My name is Andy DeMeo, and today's episode was recorded in Treeline Outfitters in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. My guest today is Jennifer Moore, who goes by Jam. Jam is the founder and co-creator of Project Upcycle, a sustainable fashion design competition for emerging designers around New England. She also started PortSwap, the city of Portsmouth's popular annual clothing swap event. We talk about why Jam loves fashion, why we could and should do it better, why sustainable fashion is funner, more fulfilling, and more ethical, her experience as a TEDx Portsmouth speaker, and many other things on this episode of Granite Goodness. I hope you enjoy it. Jennifer Moore, also known as Jam. Welcome to Granite Goodness.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. Like so many people who come on the show, I first met you at a TED Talk. We met at TEDx Portsmouth. I don't remember if I met you, but I saw your talk in 2023, and it was so good. And I remember it, and I watched it again, recently to prepare for the show. And I just there's this moment. People know a little bit about you before, like I'll do an introduction and I'll do an episode summary, you're gonna explain to the audience who you are and what you do. But the moment that sticks out for me, your talk was about sustainable fashion, and you talk about we pollute, we are too wasteful with our clothing, and there's all these really cool upcycle things that we do. And there was a moment where you just looked at the audience and you said, I know this all sounds bad, but why do I do this? Because I love fashion. I just love fashion. And it was a very humanizing moment, and your talk was wonderful, but I distinctly remember that because you were talking about a bunch of really heavy stuff and fast fashion and all the stuff that's bad. And then you're just but here's the upside. I love it. And there's so much potential and creativity and we can all these things. And it turned into a really positive thing. And I just ever since that moment, I'm wow, that's a cool lady. And then when I did the show start, I was this is a no-brainer. I gotta get Jam on. So
thank you.
That's how I met you.
I didn't think you were gonna say that part. I thought you might say a different part. There was an applause line that I didn't see coming. Where I just finally said what if the mall was filled with all secondhand stores and people, clapped. I thought you might say that.
Yeah.
And there's a time where whenever I say it, I get choked up and I talk about how important the Piscataqua is to our region, and then I talk about waterways being polluted in other parts of the world, and why is it okay? I can even feel emotional now thinking about it.
If that was our river, we wouldn't accept it. Why are we
okay with it being like that for someone else's river? So I was starting to think of what you might be talking about, what stayed with you, and I'm glad it's something I wasn't expected, because I do love fashion, and I was thinking about this before I came here, that I love fashion in a different way than a lot of people might assume, because they think if you love fashion, maybe you leave the house all the time with makeup and your hair done and looking all put together, and I don't love fashion that way. Everyone can love it in their own ways, but that's not the way I do. I love it in the way that you can love art. It's so easy for me to feel emotion when I think of art and design and human creativity. Like, I'm so moved by it. And that is what I love about fashion. I think of like couture, and I'm tearing up.
Yeah, man, we're like 2 minutes in. This is great.
Yeah, and I just and so that's why I'm so perturbed by fast fashion, because it just
Right.
muddies the whole thing, and that's what upsets me about it.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's a very elegant, compelling way to put it, right? This idea. I mean, I think any normal person would be or should be disturbed by a lot of the ways in which we pollute the earth and other people's communities, right? As you mentioned in your talk. But even the way that you describe it, like that, you see it as an environmentalist, but that also as an artist and as a creative person, this status quo, this way of doing things it's just a violation of everything you think is beautiful
Yeah.
about it. And that matters too, right? Because like, if we're gonna make a better world, if we're gonna make the one we have better than what we have now, like, it has to be beautiful. And I know that sounds silly to say, but I really think that.
Yeah. I think so much of the community work I do, because the way that I look at it is like, I don't have power. I don't have money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know important people. Like, it's just me doing this community work with great organizations in New England.
Yeah.
And it's just like one relationship at a time, or, a small community of people at a time. And me like reaching out to an emerging designer in New England to make a dress for me is part of like me tapping back into what I want in the world. Like,
Yeah.
I think people are proud of making things with their hands. And if I can be planting seeds for that coming back, I mean, I know that's a huge thing, but you got to start somewhere. So
Yeah.
that's what I feel like I'm trying to do.
Well, it means the world to every one of the designers, I bet,
Yeah.
You might be like, oh, this is just a thing. But I mean, think of what a life-changing, creatively, personally, like professionally opportunity that must be. Because you do run, and let's get into it, like maybe the coolest event that I've ever heard of in my life. I haven't had the opportunity to go, but I'm absolutely going to go next year.
Oh, you have to.
Yeah. It's amazing. Project Upcycle, right? Is that where you want to start? Like, tell us. All right, well, hold on. We got to talk about New Hampshire, because my father-in-law listens to these, and every time I don't talk about New Hampshire enough, he's like, you should talk about New Hampshire more. So here you go, Jason. Jim, can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with New Hampshire? Are you from here? You live around here?
Yeah.
Like, what do you like about it?
I was born and raised in New Hampshire, just like you.
Yeah.
I grew up in Derry.
Oh, I'm from Londonderry.
Oh my gosh, we're neighbors.
Yeah.
I went to Pinkerton Academy.
No kidding. Mortal enemies.
And yeah, I'm really proud to live in New England. I live right over the river in Kittery now. But I went to the University of New Hampshire, and this is home for me.
Yeah.
So
When did you ever want to live somewhere else, or a
lived
lot of
in-
people go through this pattern?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think, in your 20s, well, really, anytime you want to, really, but for many people, it's in their 20s. I moved to Philly, and I moved to Boston, and I think I might live in a city again one
Yeah.
more time. It's a funny thing for me. My sister is a avid hiker. She's done all the 4,000 footers, and
Good for her.
she feels so alive when she's in the mountains.
Yeah.
And the mountains are beautiful, no doubt, but I feel that when I'm in a city.
Yeah.
When I walk down a city street and there's just so much life and so many different people and different languages being spoken and different food and art, that's when I start to like tingle, like this
Yeah.
is where I need to be. So yeah, I lived in Boston and Philly for a while, and I absolutely loved it. But when I started a family is when I pulled me and my husband back to the seacoast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I relate to what you mean of, and I would like to think we can have the best of both, right? I mean, but there is nothing like cities, where it's like they're the ultimate, even the word cosmopolitan, right? Like it's what it means, but they're the ultimate expression of like, this is a completely built environment. This is 100% human beings. And, you may not love every part of them. Like, the tea could always be better, but just the fact that there's such a density of people and there's such an intersection and an exchange of culture and ideas, like there's a reason people love cities, and that's it, and they're really, really cool. I'm like you. Like I could get really into loving cities, but I also really like rural New Hampshire. And
Yeah.
you know, my favorites or my favorite things is like I feel spoiled, or I feel like we are spoiled as New Hampshireites when we have people who are really cultured and creative like yourself, who like, you know, you could stand up to any city designer or whatever. I don't doubt it. But like we get to have you here, you know. Well, people, they say there's no culture here, but there so is.
Oh yeah, I feel like it's a really rich place to live. Like I mean, I haven't traveled like some people, but I've been around and I've been places that are lovely, and it just feels like it doesn't compare though. Like
Yeah.
when you come back and you drive along the waterways and mountains are just right there, and it's just gorgeous here. So yeah, and there's so many nooks and crannies of like restaurants and makers. Like
Yeah.
it's really rich here.
Yeah. Well, you're a part of that richness.
Thank you. You made me realize as we were talking that when I go to a city and like I'm on the T and I'm just people watching,
Yeah.
that's part of that. Part of the reason I love it, I think, is because of the fashion that I'm talking about.
Mhm.
Just like everyday fashion, just like
Right.
how people express themselves. You see that so much more in a city environment than you see elsewhere.
Yeah.
I love like New England wear too, though.
Right.
Like I love a boat shoe. Like I love traditional New England clothing
Yeah.
as well. But I love how people express themselves in the city.
Do you remember when it was all like North Face jackets were really in, and UGG boots and jeans? I've when I was in high school, this was like the thing. My sister, who's older than me, was obsessed with. She was like, you have to have UGG boots and a North Face jacket, and that's like that's the look. And this is like 2009, I think. So
I love all of that. I love even what people don't love. Like I love how we communicate. I love how we signal to each other.
Mhm.
I'm fascinated by that more than anything else. Like I will sometimes, this sounds so silly, but like I'll just like part my hair on the side, and by midday I'm like, I can't even take it anymore. I have to be set apart again. Like it's so funny to me how much we feel comfortable in our skins with how we present
Yeah.
ourselves. And I saw it once in a show. I think it was Californication or something,
Mhm.
where this guy was stuck at someone's house and he was like a very rock and roll kind of guy. And he didn't have clothes. I don't remember the storyline.
Right.
So he wore the clothes of the person that was in the house, and he put on like flat front khakis and like a pink polo. And
Yeah.
it just was so wrong for him. And I just like, I'm fascinated by all of that. Like,
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
I could
why
just
is
study
that, right?
for the rest of my life. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah. This is a stupid thing, but it's relevant. My friends were visiting me. My friends from Londonderry, actually, my good friends from high school, who I don't see as much as I'd like. Whenever they're around, like, you know, we'll go hot tubbing or something, and then, you know, I'll always try and steal some of their clothes. Like I'll grab one of their shirts and I'll put it on, just to see, you know, like
Yeah.
I like to try their clothes on and to be like, oh, this is my friend Matt's style or my friend Makoto's style. And it's like, I don't have the shirts that they have or the pants that they have. And it's just fun. And they look at me and they're like, oh yeah, you look good. And I'm like, you look good in my clothes too. And it's just it's
Yeah.
like trying on a different skin. And it's a
Yeah.
fascinating,
So fascinating.
yeah.
I love it.
Like, why is that? You know,
Yeah.
I guess it's like, I mean, you've thought a lot more about it than me, but I don't know. I feel like fashion it's a very advanced, cultural, nuanced, you know, form of communication, I guess.
Yeah, and nuance feels like the right word. Like it can just be so tiny. Like it can be like the signaling that we do.
Oh, like a single earring
Yeah.
in one ear, right?
And like, you know, like the way you do your eyebrows, the way you part your hair, the way that you wear your sleeves. Like
Yeah.
everything feels like a way. And I don't mean it in a negative way. I think it's just
No.
like us
Yeah.
trying to express ourselves. And I think like, you know, we're human animals. So if all of this was removed, we'd still be doing it.
Right.
We'd just be doing it in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even, I mean, there's examples like, I used to read some Roman history books, and I mean, the Romans, like, they thought that, like, pants or trousers, they were like, that's barbarism, you know, like the Gauls wear pants, like we wear togas, you know, and that was the sign of, they were like, this is the civilized way to be, is to wear a toga, and only like barbarians wear trousers or two-legged pants, right? And it's just like, what the hell is that? Like, it's fascinating.
Yeah, like wouldn't you want like an entire college course of just fashion history?
Yeah.
Like I've never heard before what you just said. And
That's real. That's a real thing.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, wow, there's just so much. And I love it all. Yeah.
Or even I once, my wife and I went to this like Jane Austen retreat weekend in northern Vermont. This wonderful lady has like this old historic bed and breakfast. And if you really, really love Jane Austen, you can show up there, you know, you pay a couple $100 and you like, are supposed to act in character for the whole weekend. It's like a Ren Fair, but for Jane Austen, and it's stupid and silly, but everyone has fun, and you know, you drink, and but part of it is like they give lectures about like the real history of like the Edwardian or the Regency, very different Regency fashion and tradition and social custom, and like that was my favorite part.
Yeah.
Was to learn about like Beau Brummel, who was like the style setting guy, and like all these little things and the social conventions. It's all tied up in how they dress, you know?
You're making me, while we're talking, so you know that I work at New Hampshire PBS.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
there's
let's get into your career.
well, this is my day job.
Yeah.
And Miss Austen is coming out in 2025.
Miss Austen.
It's a show about Jane Austen.
I'm all in.
And so my brain like was working while we were talking. I was
Yeah.
like, wait, we should reach out. But then it's in Vermont, so Vermont Public might have dibs on doing
I
some
don't care.
collaboration
It's
with
all-
them.
it's all
right,
New
but
England.
like my mind is spinning. Like, what could we do?
We'll do something.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Let's work on
I
that.
play fast and loose with the Granite State thing. Like I don't.
As you should.
It's like 90% New Hampshire, but really, I mean, how different is, you know,
Yeah,
how different is like 10 miles across? Like
Mhm.
Kittery is the same thing as Portsmouth.
yeah. We joke that I live in Kittery, New Hampshire.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a charming thing. You know, there's like, there's an aspect to which hyper focusing on, I mean, like, for example, I live in rural New Hampshire now, you know, the difference between Tamworth and Ossipee is vast to the people who live there. But these are two towns of like 1,500 people, you know, like, and anyone else, it's like, what are you talking about? You all live in the same,
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
just like up there.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, how different could it be? And it's like, oh, it's very different, but it's really not. They're quite similar. So
Tamworth seems really cool to me. Like,
I think so.
I want to know more about Tamworth. I'll ask you next Thursday, but
Yeah.
I want to know more about Tamworth.
It's a very community oriented, like it's a farming town, you know, they have a great market. That was one of the reasons we liked it and wanted to move there. You know, there's culture. It's all my favorite parts of rural New England put into one place. So I got no complaint. I could talk about Tamworth all day, but I want to talk about you.
Okay. Later, we'll talk about that.
So were you always into fashion? Like even as a kid? Like tell me about that.
No, I'm a Gen X kid, so
Mhm.
I spent my whole childhood playing outside, and I have a lot of scars to prove it. Like I was always climbing a tree or riding bicycles that were too big for me, and
Mhm.
I was never thinking about fashion. And everything that I wore was a hand-me-down from an older brother or sister. My mother loved beautiful things, and I think I got it from her. It's so funny how emotional I can get.
Well, it's personal. You know?
Yeah. So in one of the talks I've given, I talked about how she grew up in Somerville, and she
Mhm.
used to go to Filene's basement. It's where she got her wedding dress. So she got her wedding dress from Filene's basement, and the bottom of the dress was literally dirty from being dragged on the floor.
Yeah.
And she brought it home and washed it with a toothbrush and soapy water. And so it was her influence on me. She was a very stylish city lady.
Mhm.
And then she married my husband and moved up to New Hampshire. Actually, I think they lived in Londonderry. The first place they lived was in Londonderry.
Really?
Yeah. So, and I remember there's just like silly little things that influence me. Like my mom read romance novels, and we
Yeah.
were talking about like Jane Austen. Like
Yeah.
the covers of those books were beautiful to me as
Yeah.
a little kid, and I'm going to admit that I sorted them on the floor by my favorite, my favorite to least favorite,
Yeah.
like book cover, and it was very much influenced by the dress, of course.
Okay, hold on, because I was going to say these must be like not super trashy. Like when I think of a romance novel, I think of like some buff Fabio type
No.
on the corner of a grocery store aisle.
No, they were more like Jane Austen kind of
Yeah.
book, but not
Good.
that quality,
Yeah.
but that style
Yeah.
of story.
Elegant,
Yeah.
tasteful. Mm-hmm. That's very sweet.
Yeah.
Organizing the books.
It's a true story. Yeah.
And so that, like, what age was that, and how did that turn into, starting to really care about clothes in real life?
So, I mean, I was probably like a young teen, preteen at the time that I was doing that, but I still, like, for years was just like a kid who played outside.
Yeah.
And I think it switched over because I went to high school in the 80s. I graduated from high school in 1986.
Yeah.
And I went to college, and I was obsessed with Madonna. So I think part of it just had to do with that I was a person in the world at
Yeah.
that time, and I loved participating in it.
Right.
So I was obsessed with Madonna. I wore bustiers to parties with blazers, and I even got into contests to, like, what is it when you you pretend to be a celebrity? Like,
Oh, sure.
yeah, I
Like an
did.
impersonation.
I did that
Yeah.
like a couple times in Boston
For Madonna?
For Madonna, yeah. And so, like, think
So
way
you're
back.
like a world-class Madonna impersonator.
I mean, I lip synced. I had the whole outfit. I made the outfit.
That's
So
super cool.
yeah, I just was like having fun with it all, and so what changed me was that I was always able to very easily purchase things secondhand or vintage. So vintage, when you're in the 80s, was like 60s and 70s
Yeah.
clothing, and I had really good quality, oftentimes natural materials, unless it was like polyester from the 70s.
Yeah.
And really well made, a lot of it made in the USA. And then time goes on, I get married, I have kids. My kids, when they were home with me, we just wore secondhand clothes, but they had to go to school. And so
Yeah.
I had to like buy, decent clothing for them to go to school.
Right.
And that is when I understood what had been going on all the time. I
Yeah.
know that sounds silly, but like, if you don't have to go to new stores, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I had to go into a store with new clothes.
Right.
Like, if you walk into a mall and you haven't been in a mall for a long time, you're like, it's sad.
Yeah. What happened? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, the lighting is bad, and the clothes smell like poison.
Yeah. They
like,
do. It's very intense.
yeah, it was like an overwhelming, like, bad reaction that
Yeah.
I didn't like what was available for me to purchase for my kids. And so that's really what started all of this, because I started to learn about what was happening. And I thought like, oh, okay, well, this is fine. I'll just go search for clothes. And then when I searched for clothes that were made, sustainably, at that time,
Yeah.
so it was like 2000, it wasn't a million years ago, but it was a while ago,
Yeah.
I couldn't find well-made, sustainable children's clothing.
Right.
Like, so it just started me on a path, and really just to continue with this and wrap it up, I guess, is that like,
go on.
I guess that's why we're
This
here.
is your
is it?
chance to go. Everything you
So-
didn't fit into the talk. This is what it's for.
So I don't like this term, but it is true for me, is that I was a mommy blogger. So I was coming against these challenges, and I was looking for solutions. And so I started a blog, and that's where my handle Recover Girl comes from. So
Yeah.
it's Cover Girl with RE for reduce, reuse, recycle. And so I was blogging about my children. And then something happened where I woke up and realized I was blogging about my children, and
Yeah.
and they might not like that, and they
Yeah.
didn't like it, and my husband was kind of uncomfortable with it. So
Right.
I deleted everything. So
Yeah.
that there was no evidence of all of that. And then, but I really liked what I was doing, just
Right.
poking around and finding answers and learning from people and sharing solutions. So I just started fresh again, and I just focused on the things that I like.
Right.
So it was focused on fashion and design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're ahead of the curve in that way, right? Of like that's an evolving topic now, right? Of given like how easy it is to make content, and there's nothing wrong with like trying to make things family oriented, but there is a real thorny area where it's
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, if I'm gonna record my children or take pictures of them, how public do I want to be about that? They can't really consent to it. So the fact that you were thinking about that well before everyone had a smartphone in their pocket, I think is like interesting.
Yeah, and I think like you can't ask a child
No.
because they don't even know what you're asking.
Yeah.
They don't know what it means. So, yeah, and I'm proud of that decision.
Yeah,
to,
you should
to
be.
cancel it all.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, or to take that and then to think, okay, what parts of this did I really enjoy that, my kids won't feel weird about it later, or I don't have to, worry about that, or, like, I think that's smart, like there's an alternative world where I think someone could have seen that or done it and thought, oh, I wasn't comfortable with how this passion of mine turned out and affected my family. I'm going to let it die forever. I can't do it at all anymore, right? It's like, no, the soul of the thing that you liked wasn't like blogging about your kids on the internet. It was the fashion part.
Right. Yeah. It was the seed for everything else.
Yeah.
And so I just kept going with that and kept to their privacy. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful. I mean, yeah, it's a weird way to start. And I don't think that if people know about what I've done in the community, they wouldn't assume that that's where it all started. But
Right.
that's how it started.
What I do think a fair amount of people though, like if talking as though the starting point is like, oh, I wanted to get my kids some nice clothes for school, or even, I mean, there's a whole generation of, mother activists who pick your issue, whether it's like, I want my kids to have healthier food, I want my kids to have better activities, I want them to have a better relationship with technology and media, it's like, and it's all comes from a really good place.
Yeah.
Of like, a lot of the time I don't know that we think about all these things until like you're having to curate a whole life
Yeah.
for a little one dependent on you, right? So I don't think that's that unusual at all, of like your segue into caring a lot about the ethics and sourcing of fashion was, oh, well, I haven't had to buy new clothes
Yeah.
for a long time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're making me think of all the other things. It wasn't just buying clothes. When you're wanting to educate your children and entertain your children, you think of going to get toys.
Yeah.
And I would go to the toy store. Never had to go to the toy store before.
Right.
So I'd go to a toy store, and it was a similar feeling. Like, I don't like these toys. They're just like so plastic and not that imaginative. And,
Yeah.
And so one of the things I did blog about that is, now deleted, is that my son is an engineer. He's graduated now from college, and he just liked to take things apart. So I went to the dump and I got an old phone, and he just like took a phone apart.
Wow.
So I think that kind of like just thinking differently,
Yeah.
not filling the world with another thing,
Yeah.
just using what we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I really like that way of thinking, right? Particularly, I mean, my wheelhouse and kind of professional background is in, sustainability is such a large, I'm not like a sustainability expert, but I studied conservation and a smattering of sustainability issues in college, and I've worked at different organizations that have some intentional, environmentalist related impact. So I'm thinking about these things a lot, and, there's not a debate, but like so much of, our lives and, the life cycles of products and supply chains, right? Like a lot of it's not great for the environment, and we're working on that, and there's like really smart people making it better. And I get that. But what I like about your work is that it is focused on taking advantage of resources that we already have. You know, like instead of saying, how do we design the supply chains of global fashion, or even just like your personal supply chain or footprint in terms of what you buy, to have it be like perfect and good and have nothing wrong with manufacturing new stuff all the time. What if we just looked at the mountains and mountains of clothes that have already been manufactured and got more mileage out of them?
Yeah.
You know, and not just that, but like there's a whole world that we can open up if we're just creative and open-minded about it. Like people are used to thinking of reduce, reuse, recycle as like, this is something that's going to limit my opportunities. I have to think smaller. I have to, you know, be tiny and, you know, not leave an impression on the world. But like your work goes directly in the opposite direction, where it's like, sure, on a material level, we're working with less resources because we're not trying to manufacture new clothing, but we're taking all things that already exist and we are just being so infinitely inventive and creative about it. And like, I think that's when people talk about sustainability and, you know, using things efficiently, like I just think that's the solution. That's what we need more of, because it's beautiful, it's functional, it's helpful, and it's beautiful too. And people miss the beauty part. And that's what I really like about what you do. So tell us about it.
I feel verklempt. That is so sweet. And I do feel like I can take that compliment, because
Take it.
like I said at some point, like, I don't have any influence, I don't have any money, I don't have any power, and I just was like, but what can I do?
Yeah.
And so like the annual clothing swap, which I want people to think of as Port Swap. It's like a brand name that nobody embraces, but I'm going to just keep pushing it. And it started at the library where I was an employee more than 10 years ago. I don't know, maybe it's 15 years now. And it was an immediate success.
Mm-hmm.
People just, there were so many people in the room that people were talking about how it was like a fire hazard. Like, that's how many people showed up. And
That's a good sign.
after a few years, we had to move to a much larger venue. So we moved to the community center. And that year, which was the year before the pandemic, we had over 500 people show up. Yeah.
That's huge.
That is huge.
To show up for something in person.
And what you were saying is like that it's beautiful. Like, it is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people showed up and they were taking things out of their closet that they didn't wear anymore. We all know we have those things.
Yeah.
And there so many of those things are in great condition, but that shoe just doesn't fit you right. So you never reach for it. You reach for the other pair. Mm-hmm. So there's so much value in all of these things that are hiding in our closets. And these people happily bring them to this thing. And then they refill their bag with clothes that are from their neighbors and their friends.
Yeah.
And I've never seen people happier. Like,
Right.
People are bananas happy. And what happens too is that 500 people are in a room and people are bumping into each other, and
Right.
there's music playing and kids are dancing around, and everybody, it's just like, yeah, it's the good news that we're looking for.
What's not to like?
Yeah. And so I said the year before the pandemic, 500 people came. It's moved around a little bit because I don't work at the library anymore, but now it is an event that is embraced by the city of Portsmouth, and it came back to the community center now. So in 2023, nearly 800 people.
It's still
came.
a lot.
800 people came and shared their clothing and their shoes with each other.
Right.
And I think about what that does. Like, maybe you find the best pair of shoes that you're wearing all the time, so you're not buying another new pair of shoes. So I think that really matters, and it makes me really happy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even think of the impact. I mean, again, even if like I'm sure they're not going to like stop buying clothes forever, but like it's going to put a dent in it.
Yes.
You know, and you think of like, I mean, it's the triple threat. It's like, what is not to like? You save money, a ton of money.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think of the market value of all those clothes when they were new, put together, it's an absurd.
It's making all my hair stand up
Yeah,
because
it's
that
bananas.
is so much money.
It's a thousands and thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, if all the stuff that people had in their closets times 800 times year over year, like, it's just, we spend so much money on new. And it's like a car, like, it depreciates immediately the moment someone puts it on or buys
Yeah.
it. It's like, it's crazy.
Right. But then it is valuable. It has new value for the new person that gets it because
it still works. Their
Yeah.
pants.
yeah, because I do have like a perfectly good blazer that's a little too oversized, but maybe it fits someone else perfectly. So the value is still there for them.
Yeah.
Even though it's not for me.
My wife, there's a great pop-up. It's not even a pop-up. At the farmer market, they have like a reused fashion store in the basement of the church. And a couple of weeks ago, she got like, I swear to God, like a cashmere, like basically a
Oh my
brand new
God.
cashmere. It was like $5.
Oh my
It would have been like $100 new. It fits
Yeah.
her perfectly, you know? And she was like, this is the find of a lifetime, you know? Or like when I was in college, we could talk about thrift shopping for like,
Yeah.
I got this jacket at the thrift shop in Durham, and I'm not trying to like flex my fashion sense, but like, it was the coolest jacket I've ever seen in my life. It's like a Picasso painting, but like on the back of a jacket. I'm not even kidding. I have never worn it without getting complimented on it.
Oh my
And I wore it
gosh.
every day of college. It was like, it became a joke past a certain point. Like, I'd be with my friends and I'd be like, I got the jacket. You with me for the whole day, wait for the compliments. And it happened every time. And I got it at a thrift store.
Oh
it was
my
like,
God.
It was like $10.
Yeah.
You know? And it's just like, there is infinite, the amount of joy and just like fun that I got from that someone gave away.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know where they got it or what they paid for it, but like, that was my cool jacket that I wore for most of my 20s. And it was so much fun. And I got it for pennies.
Yeah.
You know?
Joy is the word I was thinking of too. Like
Yeah.
there is a lot of joy when you find like a magic piece that helps you express who you are, because like that is who you are.
Yeah.
That you wore that for so many years. Like someone else wouldn't be able to pull it off. It wouldn't be joy for them.
Yeah.
So I just love, it's back to just love of fashion and expressing yourself.
Do you have any, I mean, you're handier than I am in terms of like sewing and mending things. So perhaps like your ceiling or your creative sphere for what is a possibility for you when you get clothes is much wider than mine. Whereas me, I'm like, all right, if I get something at the store, like that's what it's, I can't mess with it at all. But I don't know. Do you have any like all-time favorite like thrift or upcycle finds like for your own wardrobe?
I have a really beautiful secondhand trench coat that is it's like a patterned coat, and I did alter it so that it would fit me perfectly. So it's reversible, and the inside pockets were ones that I wanted for the outside. So I removed the pockets and moved them to the side that I always wear it.
Yeah.
And I'm short, so I shortened the sleeves so that the sleeves of my dress shirts would stick out. And like you, it is the thing. When I bought it, I was like, this is such a dorky librarian jacket.
Yeah.
But I love it and I want to wear it.
Right.
And surprisingly, it is the thing that I get more compliments on than anything. I just think of it as like a dorky overcoat, but apparently it's cool and people like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to see it. You should have worn it.
I want you to wear your jacket to Project
my God.
Upcycle next year.
I definitely will.
Yeah.
I definitely will.
On the red carpet.
My Picasso jacket. Well, it's funny. It was someone on some Netflix show, like some character actually had the jacket on. It was like an exact copy of it. And someone came to me one day and they were like, I saw your jacket on TV. This person had it on. And they're like, that the fact that they remembered it, I think was very telling. And they're like, man, that was a find. But yeah, so you started with, the port swap, right? Which is big success. People save money, they build community, they get stories and make friends, and they come back and do it. keep us going on that story.
Sure.
Because there's also Project
Upcycle. So I talked about being a mommy blogger with Recover Girl and how I continued with just fashion and design. And so I was a content creator. It's just that it was like old-timey blogs instead of like TikTok. So I was making content really for myself. I just liked doing it. I liked examining what I saw in the world and boiling it down to what I was noticing and then just sharing that. And the local paper invited me to start contributing a regular column. So this was the Sound, which doesn't exist anymore. But I'm so grateful they asked me to do this because it was definitely out of my comfort zone, and I was afraid to do it, but I did it anyway. And so I started interviewing people on the Seacoast that I thought were exhibiting really great sustainable style. And so it was like older gentlemen and like a 14-year-old kid that came into the library, and I really went with my gut. I went with people that I really noticed, and I was nervous because I was like, what do I know? But I just was staying true to myself. And I think of that because I heard very positive feedback for who I was featuring. And so I just kept going. And what that allowed me to do was have this physical evidence of the work that I was doing so that I could show someone.
Right.
And that is those issues of Style Q, that was the name of the series, is what I brought to 3S when I, cold called, like pitched the idea of Project Upcycle. So I felt like if anyone just went to an organization and said, we should do a sustainable fashion challenge for designers, emerging designers from all over New England, they'd be like, who are you? And what credentials do you have? So I brought issues that I'd be like, I'm not a crazy person. Like this might work.
There's something here.
And I really just think that the stars were aligning that day because I've told this story a couple of times. The person I was supposed to meet at 3S Art Space was gone that day. And so Beth Falconer, the executive director of 3S, had to take a meeting with me because that person was gone. I think like their child was out sick or something. So I met with her, and the minute I knew that that's what was happening, I remember this. I literally sat up straight and moved forward in my chair, and I was like, now's your chance, Jen. You got to pitch this. And I mean, I just think it's like the stars aligning, that it is something that works for them and it works for, the kind of community work that I'm interested in. And we've been partners ever since. It was something that you wanted to see in the world. You wanted to manifest. I mean, it's kind of like, not to be too meta about it, but that's the essence of design, right? It's like you bring your creative vision into the world, and designing events, and shows is like, that's a very real discipline and practice, So it's kind of like, I love how you frame, like all the things that you talk about, like you frame them as, I'm an artist. Like this is an artist's perspective, you're a creative, bringing like, I don't know, like there's different ways, like you could view it as like, no, this is a business opportunity, or like a cult, like, but I feel like you see yourself and you view the world through an artistic lens, and that's just like very interesting to me, That is like, such a nice compliment. That is really, really sweet. I'm scared a lot of the time. I'm not just saying that. Like I just am like scared to make good art, But I just am like I guess I do. I'm just asking for what I want to see, and what I wanted is for designers to come together, because I know that good things happen when you bring people together. And honestly, that is the thing that I am more proud of than anything else, is that these designers come from all over New England. Should I explain what Project Upcycle is? Yeah, for sure. Please do. They don't know. So my mom's going to listen. She just no idea. I did say it, but I'll just repeat it here. So Project Upcycle is a annual sustainable fashion competition for emerging designers from around New England. And each year, 3S and a team, there's a whole team of people that put this together. And I bring 8 designers to compete over 3 days. And the material that they design with is donated from New England companies.
Yeah.
And this past year, material was donated from Martin's and American Woolen and LDI in Rochester, I think, or Somersworth. So it's just like, it is like a weekend wedding. It is like, it is just activity from the minute they arrive until the end of the live event. And so the way that it works is they show up. It's kind of like Project Runway, but it's live. Yeah. I mean, that's obviously where I got the title from. And then it just turns into a live event that people from the Seacoast can witness, and now they meet the designers and they see these designs walk the runway, and they can help vote, and we have judges, and there are cash prizes given to the top 3 designers, which I always like to bring up this piece. Like when I was growing up, people talked about microloans in developing parts of the world as a way. Yeah.
Muhammad Yunus.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I think of that. It's like, it's not a loan because we're not asking for the money back, but that a designer, an emerging designer, would get like $1,500 or $1,000. Like, that matters.
Yeah, it's meaningful for them.
Yeah, it can be a new machine, or it can be like a month's rent, or maybe more in a first studio or something. Like, it just, it's a little bit, but I imagine that it is part of what I talk about when I say planting seeds for the future. Yeah.
Or even some of them, I imagine, like, that may very well be the first time that anyone has ever compensated them for their design work, right? And you think of like I don't doubt you have many anecdotes of like, this was really great opportunity for me, and like just the validation and confidence that probably brings to them and their artistic aspirations or their career. Like, what a cool opportunity.
I've witnessed exactly what you are saying every year. Every year.
What do they say to you?
So there was one year where there was a designer. She goes by Mick, but it's MICH, Mick. And she does upcycling, and she is a powerhouse, and she does a lot of shows in Boston, and she sells a lot of her work. She's doing very well for herself. But she uses pattern pieces that she creates. And when you are competing in Project Upcycle, you can't bring a pattern. You have to, you are introduced to a community role model, and you have to design for their body. So you need to really understand how to make clothes for the body, which is not easy. It is a very hard thing to do.
Everybody's different. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And so at some point we have a Zoom meeting with the designers, and that question comes up. Even when it's in writing, they'll still say like, wait, we can't bring pattern pieces? Like, no, you have to measure the body, and you have to, and there's no way around that. And so she said something like, oh, I better start watching some YouTube videos. And she designed something that made her so proud. It could make me cry. And she posted something on social after, like, that this pushed her to just go into areas that she was, we're all afraid to go into areas that we're unsure of, but this made her go there. There was a reason to go there, and she was very proud of the work. And I do know that she took some courses at Mass Art because she asked me to write a letter of recommendation when and that is just one of so many stories just exactly like that.
Yeah. Well, I bet that on the tail end of that experience, I'm sure it's like a jump before you look kind of thing for a lot of them, where it's like, wait, if you're going to tell me that in 3 days I had to do a whole new pattern design on a model that I've never seen or met or interacted with, and then we're going to, finish it, put it on, get them to go on stage and move, and there's going to be people, and it's going to be like a whole real event, and they're going to be like, I have to do all that, and then they do it. And it's like, oh, I didn't know I could do that.
Yeah.
Until
And then they're levitating.
Right.
They're like, and they're a part of a group of 8 people that have lived through it together.
Yeah.
And when you do that, like, you fall in love with people. Like, they are just like, they become family and they are transformed. And then the audience is transformed because we all see it. And that is another thing that I'm so proud of, is that this is not a competition in a way that is like judgy.
Yeah.
This is a celebration of risk taking and creativity, and you feel it when you're in that room.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing I kind of wanted to harp on with you, is that I really like how you view fashion, right? As fundamentally, like, it is a celebration, it's an expression. And there's this view, I think, of fashion, even the term like high fashion, right? People think of, Vogue and Anna Wintour and, how mean she is, legendarily, right? And I love The Devil Wears Prada, like, it's an infamous movie because, Meryl Streep just like personified so many of, these like cultural associations we have with like what it means to be working or living at the elite level in terms of fashion professionally, right? Mm-hmm. And everything that you do is just like, it flips all that on its head, like you gather together and you work with like world-class people, designers, and, all these things. And it's just the opposite of, what a lot of people are told fashion or any kind of, industry activity in fashion should be, right? Which is like elitist and not accessible and all about money and status. And it's just like, and you have to look a certain way. And if you can't buy this, but like, it's all these things that like violate the spirit of what I feel like you're about, which is the opposite of all that.
Oh, that's a very nice compliment.
Oh, I mean it. I think it's cool, and we need more of it.
It does feel like, when I think of what we're doing, it does feel like that is what we're doing. And that feels really good. And I'm glad to hear you say that, because I wasn't even sure that, I don't know that has been, I mean, to make it so that it's not a competition and that it is a celebration is certainly something that we are trying to do.
Yeah.
But that it is in contrast to what is happening to the world, that wasn't even like, I wasn't thinking of them.
Interesting.
I was just thinking of us. And I that is reinforced sometimes, like, what we're doing just feels really special. The MC for the event for the last few years has been Gemma Soldati. She's an incredible performer. Oh, yes.
Is she the Pillowhead?
Yes, Sleepyhead.
Okay, what is that?
That is amazing, and you should have her on your show to talk about Sleepyhead.
I had Emmett on.
Yes, I saw that clip. Yeah.
Interesting family.
Oh, so interesting. And she has studied performance, like, all over the world. She's performed. She's really, like, that she is here and that she helps us with our event is just like, I pinch myself, like, how lucky we are. And at the end of this last event, she said something that feels like it's, echoing what you're saying. The event was over and the checks were handed out and we were all just like buzzing, like the whole room is just buzzing. And then she said, I'm just going to say this off the cuff, but she's like screaming, people like clapping, and she's like, this is what community looks like. This is what sustainability looks like. Like, it doesn't have to be doom and gloom, this work. It can be a party. It can be fun. It can be about people falling in love with each other. Like, it can be all that.
Yeah. I love that. I got to get her on. But no, great. I mean, everyone I've ever talked to who's interacted with, your work or that event in particular, they basically say the same thing. They're like, this is it. You get people to feel a thing that like they know is possible, should be possible, that they desire, and then it's just like, I mean, put it this way, Jam. One of my favorite books is this. It's a silly book, but it's fun. It's this book called Frugal Hedonism. It's by these crazy Australian people, and it's called The Art of Frugal Hedonism, and it's all about like, hey, you can live more cheaply and actually in a way that is like better for your health and probably the environment and is way funner. Not saying you have to do it all the time, but like if you just take that approach of like, all right, I'm stuck somewhere and I'm lost, like what if instead of trying to pay for a way out, what if I ask a stranger for help, or what if instead of buying a new thing to solve a problem, I ask my friends and family if they have anything or they know anyone, right? Like sourcing solutions from your network of existing resources or community is like often saves you money and is more fulfilling and is way funner
Way more fun.
at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's the ethos of everything you're doing.
Yeah.
I feel like
I didn't realize that, but I'm really glad that you're making me
it's
aware of that.
frugally hedonist. That's how they describe it. It's living well, but without more money, right?
Yeah. I have to tell you that I've made sort of a mini tradition where I will ask a designer that has previously competed to design a look for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that process is one of the richest, most fun things that I've experienced in my life. To work directly with a designer, that is so much more interesting than going into a brightly lit store and just buying a thing and then taking it home. It is, we could be doing things in ways that are so much more about human relationships and yeah.
Well, why isn't that the normal thing to do?
And
right?
it was
Yeah.
we used to have clothes made for us. And then of course that I'm not suggesting that we do that for everything, but for
Right.
a special event, we should have designers here the way that we have doctors and lawyers and someone that fixes your car. It should that should be a part of our ecosystem here. And that's what I'm trying to do, really in New England. I know that this is way far away from that happening, but it's just about planting seeds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that world is downstream from the work that you're doing, really. I'm completely serious when I say, if we want things to change and to be better, finding the joyful, you're never going to get anyone, whatever your beliefs are or whatever direction you think the world is going to go in, you just are not going to succeed unless the thing that you're pushing towards is better than what they have. And it can be, we always orient towards convenience and money, right? And it's okay, those are two things that you can value, sure. But valuing those above everything else all the time forever is not the way to go. I think that's led to a lot of problems, and people, there's so much to be gained, right?
Yeah.
What if
you're
we should design more clothes? I don't know.
Yeah, you're making me think of something that happened. It was a realization between me and another person, where I was talking about how I shop secondhand, and I do like beautiful things, so I tend to buy designer clothes, but I buy it secondhand. And so I was talking about how I wanted to go to a store in Massachusetts, on Newbury Street, that had really beautiful things. And I don't think I was even talking about that high-end store, but I was just talking about a secondhand store on Newbury Street, And I was talking to this person who said, well, that will be really expensive. And I said, it should be. Yeah. And that's the fact that I said it and the fact that she heard it, and I think we both were sort of startled.
Yeah.
Because the way that what I think people aren't thinking about when they think of secondhand, especially if it's a boutique, is they are sourcing, they are cleaning, they are mending, they are paying for the store, which is everyone, if the store next door has rent, they also have rent, and they have Wi-Fi, and they have employees. And so I'm I think because this is something I love so much that I'm a little irked that, you're saying, this is why I'm getting here, is it's not just about that it costs less.
Right.
Sometimes it should cost more.
Yeah.
And you just have fewer of them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, there's a whole, I love everything you just said, and I agree. There's a whole movement of this in different consumer products. There's a great online community on the Reddit website called Buy It for Life, and it's not just for clothes, but it's people are they recognize, just look at appliances, people used to just have one refrigerator and it worked forever. Mm-hmm. They still work, and now it's your refrigerator breaks every 10 years if you're lucky, right? And it's okay, let's move back toward quality and reliability And yeah, it'll cost a little more, but it might even save you money in the long run.
Yeah.
And like there's all these other advantages. I mean, I was with someone the other day. What's the Drift Collective?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And you know, they kind of had a similar reaction. I was like, oh, I've never been in there. I want to go in there. We walked around and they were like, they were miffed at the prices. And I didn't think they were crazy, by the way, but I'm with you. I'm like, what are you paying for?
Yeah.
If you just want to like buy the cheeseburger equivalent of pants all
Right.
the time, right?
Thank
like,
you.
Yeah, why
Yes.
would you want to do that? And they were like, wow, this is secondhand stuff and it's like $30. And I'm like, okay, but it's not really secondhand. Like this is a new, it's been refurbished and loved and designed and curated for you, you know, very intentionally.
And conveniently for you
Yeah,
in
right.
downtown.
And it's here, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so and that's all built in. And I thought the price was very good for
Yeah,
all that.
I've
you know?
I've actually had the same comment about the same place, and I feel the way that you do. Like I feel like there's even if there was not some upcycling done,
Right.
like some stores simply are curating, but the curation that takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Like, and people who get paid well, and they are constantly talking about how they're not getting paid enough or whatever. But
Right.
then when it's someone else doing work, they don't feel the same
Yeah.
way about their work. So I don't know why I don't have that disease. Like I think anybody that's like doing work in my house, or if I'm going, like I think like you should be paid well.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't have that gripe about clothes.
Well, you know everything that goes into it, you know, I think
Right.
in a way that most people don't,
Yeah.
you know.
I have said more than once, like I do so for myself, and it is so hard. It's so frustrating. And if anyone just would spend a day or a weekend trying to make clothes for themselves,
Yeah.
they would be like, I'll spend $1,000 on a pair of jeans.
Right.
Just please don't make me do this.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's one of the weird ways in which like we're spoiled by modernity a little bit. And, you know, on the one hand, it's great. Like we are abundant in all these different categories, right? Like, you know, you can look at these graphs of like, whoa, there's way more calories available for every living person, right? And it's like, okay, that's great. It's good. Less people starve to death than they used to. We have less famines. No one is against that. No one is pro-famine.
Mm-hmm.
But does that mean that everyone has, you know, the relationship to food or the food system that they want? No. You know, like people want more local food. They want to make sure it's nutritious. They want it to be affordable. We got a long way to go
Yeah.
for that, right? And I think you can draw similar analogs, you know, clothing, right? Like
For sure.
we have mountains of clothes,
Yeah.
mountains of them. And it's like, why?
Yeah. And then, I mean, now we get into like the negative piece. And some of the community work I do is that I'm a mentor for students that are in high school. I love it. I feel like I learn so much from them. And one of the questions that I got recently from a student is like, what do you say to people who want to, you know, buy from Shein or something? And I said, I don't say anything. That's not where I'm putting my energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I think like it is a problem, but that's maybe someone else's to fix, because I think if that's what they're after, then we're too far.
Yeah. It's hard to even convert. Like
Yeah.
there's just not going to be a values alignment,
Right.
you know, or rather there's other people who are probably more interested in doing that work. Right. And there's a lot of good work that you know how to do, that you're already doing and that you do really well, that really does move the needle, right? In this region, in this state, in this area, in this town, for the people who live here and the designers and the greater web that all those people do, right? Like, so you do great work, and it does have an impact.
You do you. I have met two people that have said, and I'm still surprised. Like you've probably come across this. Like if you're asked to speak, like when they when they have asked me to speak, I'm like, I don't like, doesn't everybody know this? And they're like, no, people don't know it. You have
Yeah.
to actually say it.
Yeah.
So I said it, and then I said it in a TED Talk, and I was talking to a woman friend, and her husband was standing there, and she said, he went to your TED Talk, and he said, that changed the way that I buy clothes. He said those words to me.
Yeah.
And then my friend, I was talking with him, and his mom was there, and she said, like, I had no idea that what, you know, it. So I was like, it's not that person that you don't know
Yeah.
out in the universe. It's like the person that you're standing next to that you're influencing, and I had no idea.
Yeah.
So it's so good to hear when people say that out loud, because it keeps me going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's obvious to you, right? And you know, that's part of the beauty of, you know, I mean, fashion and design, right, is like a good metaphor for human interaction and knowledge exchange. Like, there's many things. I mean, this is what I love about the show, is like, I'm oblivious to all things. I'm an expert in like 2.5 things. It's like
2.5.
drumming,
Oh.
Oscar Wilde, and maybe a little bit of like progress and solutions in the Granite State now that I'm doing the show. That's it. I know nothing about anything else. And I'm not even that good at the drums anymore, because I don't play it all the time.
Also just that we're all fed things in our own social media feed
Yeah.
too. So I am just bombarded with this stuff. So
Right.
that is definitely making me think, like, everybody knows this, right?
Yeah.
Because it's in my feed every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the way that you do it, like, actually, I wanted to comment on this a little bit. Like, I'm with you. I think we should pay more for better quality stuff. And I think most people will be happier and will be collectively better off if we choose to live that way. That's just my opinion. That being said, you know, there's an upper limit to which, you know, the solution for anything can be, well, just pay more for it. And that's what I like about, like, there's so many ways to get into your work and to get excited and interested about it. Like, okay, you don't have to go to the Drift Collective and buy a bunch of new stuff. If you can find a way to get excited about, you know, being thrifty and creative, you can have you can do anything you want, because there is such abundance of,
Yeah.
you know, fabric and design options and ways to learn and ways to share. Like, it's literally making something from nothing. Like, you're literally building like wealth almost, in a way.
You can use trash.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people do. And I was giving a talk once at UNH, and I was getting challenged by a student about how much sustainably designed clothing costs, and my response to it was like, let's have more swaps. Like,
Right.
Like, let's share what we have, and people can get things for free.
Yeah.
And people are so willing to give, you
Yeah.
know, things in their household. Like, it's just a matter of like organizing these
Yeah.
events, and it is part of the community work that I do. Is like, one of those students I'm talking to is having one in her high school, and another high school has had one, and now Durham has a swap. Like, I'm just going to focus on like here,
Yeah.
and I want it to spread around New England,
Right.
and then the whole country's going to look at us and think, like, how cool are they? Like, they're going to want to do it too.
That's right.
Yeah.
Leading the way in the Granite State. Yeah. No, but really, I mean, why don't we, like, what rational, actually good reason is there that we as a country or as a world, like, why don't we have clothing swaps every month in
And
every
not
school?
just clothing swaps, right?
Yeah, or everything swap. Yeah.
I know this from a friend that there's a place, I think it's like in Portland, not Maine, Portland, Oregon. They have, it's a way for this organization. I think they raise money for to give money to college students to go to, like, scholarships
Sure.
for high school students. So they have, for many years, I think decades now, have had a community swap, and they sell the things. So
Yeah.
people donate stuff. It's so much work to do it at this level,
Right.
that, but they do it with volunteers, and the money that they raise would blow your mind. I don't want to say a figure because I'm so bad with numbers, I'll get
Yeah.
it wrong. But like, it's another thing, like, there's so much value in what we have.
Yeah.
And we could raise money for organizations with this sort of stuff, because you know, like you have a canoe in your basement and you actually want it gone.
Right.
And you're like, oh, now I have a place to have it gone. Like, and if I knew that it was going to go to like a student going to college,
Yeah.
that would just make me so much happier.
Yeah. Of course,
Yeah.
I'll get rid of that canoe. You
Yeah.
can't-
So like, yeah, you're making me think like, why doesn't every municipality have a program like this? And like, we had this one in Portsmouth and it was such a success that I am going to like, hopefully I can get someone to volunteer, but I want a photographer to come so that we can like have like this great evidence of what it is that we're doing. And maybe we can go to like whatever conferences you go to when you run a city and give a talk, like a TED talk basically, to all the people that are there from different cities. And like, let's just keep planting these seeds. And maybe this will be something that all cities do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not?
Why not?
I mean, it's, I don't mean to make it sound easy, but like on a relative level, it's kind of low hanging.
Yeah.
Well, at least when you think of like all the work that's put into in organizations or in municipalities, right? Of like, man, let's find new revenue streams. Let's find ways to cut costs. Now it's like, there is a mountain of shit or possessions or objects that people no longer value for themselves, that with just a little bit of organization and polish and, you know, application of skills that people like you have and are excited to do, you know, marketing, design, sales, event planning, organization, all that, like you could get a lot of money out of
Yeah.
that. And that's just to say nothing of all the other benefits.
Right, because it's that community aspect too. Like, it's fun.
Yeah.
People want to go. There's so many of, like, the marketing that you have to do to get people to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And, like, people are just lining the streets. Their cars are down the road, like, to go to this event. Like, people want to do the right thing. And sometimes when it's easy to do the right thing, they're so happy to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a good segue into our final question, because I could talk to you forever.
This is fun.
Yeah, but well, before I do that, is there anything that you like really wanted to talk about that you feel like we didn't cover? I always want to give people that.
Okay,
chance.
I'm taking advantage of this opportunity.
No, this is your time.
So Project Upcycle, I'm pretty sure this is not 100%, but I think that next year is going to be an all-stars. So it's always a great event, but I think like next year is going to be bigger and better than ever. So start planning your red carpet outfit for next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will. I'll wear something bananas. My wife likes to design, so she'll do
nice.
something.
I can't wait to see you both.
Oh man. Yeah, we'll go.
Okay,
I'll
good.
tell me the moment it is done. I'll block my calendar.
Okay.
But yeah, so you're talking to you about your work and, you know, seeing it and having seen your talk, like, and just things that we're talking about just now, it makes me feel very optimistic, because this is going to sound silly, but I do think about it like to use local food as like one comparative issue, right? You think of all the places, and I know there's like a good reason why we don't have like gardens everywhere, but like not that many good reasons. Like people want more local food. Why isn't it in our cultural practice to just like put gardens everywhere? I don't know why. We could do it. And when I think about it from that lens, it makes me feel like, boy, this is a big problem, but we really aren't trying that hard to like really solve. Like if we were, I would feel a lot worse about that issue if I felt like everyone was working really hard to put gardens everywhere and cities and businesses, and everyone was doing it, and they were like just doing a really good job of it. And like if we just had gardens all the time everywhere, and we were still having a really hard time getting people to like have more local food that they're happy about, all right, I could accept that, because it would be like, oh, I see the effort. We're really, really trying, and we're still falling short of it. We're not even trying.
Yeah.
We're at like 1% of like what we're capable of as a society, which could make you depressed, but also like, wow,
Opportunity.
What potential.
Yeah.
And I feel the exact same way about your work, right? Of like, man, there's so many problems, but like, this is so within our abilities. It's so within the reach of like the material and creative resources that we all have. Like, it is quite solvable. And not only that, it's fun and joyful to do. Like there aren't many times when that's all those things align. So that's what makes me feel optimistic about your work. And I selfishly talk way too much about it. I just think it's so cool because I love fashion. But what makes you optimistic about your work, Jim? I want to hear it from your mouth.
I think it's the young people that I meet. So it is so good to hear your perspective on what it is that we're doing, because you can lose sight of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can get into the work and forget. But I every year meet a crop of 8 emerging designers. They're not always young. They're often young, but they're not always young. And they give me hope. And now it's been going on 6 years. So that's 6 times 8 people that have gone through.
A lot of people.
Yeah, that's an army of designers that we have right here. So just like, and then I start thinking, like, where will they be working? And we know them, and how can we keep collaborating? Like, it just, I know I've said planting seeds way too much in this thing, but it feels like that is the promise and the hope are these emerging designers that go through this system, and they keep coming back. Like people, a handful of them came back this year that were in years before, so that they feel welcome, and yeah, that's what gives me hope.
Yeah, they don't have to keep coming back.
Yeah, they
There's
don't.
lots of things to do.
Yeah, and for some of them, it's quite a distance. Like they come from Rhode Island and Vermont, and
Wow.
for an evening event where it's a city that's expensive to stay over. So it's a lift to come to that event, and they make the trip.
Well, they must get something out of it, man. All right, I could talk to you forever. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. It's so fun.
Your work's great. We got to have you on again. Maybe closer to the next Project Upcycle. Like, I love having people back on and to keep up with their work and what's new with them. But yeah, thank you very much for coming on, Jim.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Hey there, thanks for spending some time with us, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation. You can learn more about today's guest and how to get involved with or support their work in the show notes. If you'd like to suggest a guest for the show or have any story tips for our Good News in New Hampshire newsletter, shoot me a message at hello@granitegoodness.com. Music for this episode was provided by the band Sneaky Miles, who hail from Newmarket, New Hampshire. Until next time, I'm the creator and host of Granite Goodness, Andy DeMeo. Thanks for listening.